picture a judge in a courtroom. You've got a thief, a saint, a ruthless mafia boss, and a really dedicated charity worker all standing before the bench.
Right. Totally opposite ends of the moral spectrum.
Exactly. And the judge looks at all four of them, bangs the gavel, and declares that every single one of them is completely right.
Wow.
Yeah, every action they've taken is entirely justified. And then the judge points that gavel directly at you, sitting quietly in the gallery, and says the only person in this room who is wrong is you, simply because you are judging them.
That is, I mean, it completely shatters the fundamental lens through which we view human behavior and societal order.
It really does.
We're just so conditioned to structure civilization around binary precision, good and bad, right and wrong. So encountering a philosophy that obliterates those categories feels like a cognitive earthquake.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. Today's deep dive is going to require you to completely suspend your traditional moral compass for the next 15 minutes or so. We are unpacking a single, deeply fascinating philosophical text titled Who is Wrong by an author named Xu Feming, edited by Care.
It's a heavy one.
It is. The mission today is to explore this radical, almost disorienting worldview, claiming that literally no one in the world is wrong, and that the act of judging others is the only actual error taking place. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Where do we even start with a premise like that?
Well, the author forces the reader to really examine the very architecture of their own consciousness. It's an ambitious text because it doesn't just ask you to, be more tolerant.
Right.
It demands that you recognize your own internal judgments as the sole source of friction in your reality.
So to understand how the author justifies this, we have to look at the foundation of his argument, which begins with the neutrality of nature. The premise is starkly simple, actually. Everyone thinks they are right, and therefore they are.
Yeah, the text points to mice burrowing into the earth. We humans pave over their burrows or set traps, completely convinced that we are protecting our property and that the mice are just a nuisance.
But from the perspective of the mouse, burrowing is just survival.
Exactly. The mouse believes its actions are perfectly right, and that mankind is an aggressive, destructive force. The text extends this to cats catching mice, wolves hunting for meat, sheep eating grass.
Right. The wolf isn't experiencing a moral crisis when it takes down prey.
No, not at all. It operates under the complete justification of its own nature.
Which, makes sense. When you watch a nature documentary, you see a hawk swooping down to eat a field mouse. You don't categorize the hawk as evil.
Right, it's just biology playing out its necessary mechanisms.
We accept that naturalistic observation, but human beings aren't just operating on biological instinct, which is where the author's transition becomes so challenging.
Yeah, the friction really ignites when Xuefeng applies this identical logic to complex human ideologies and lifestyles. The text lists a whole array of human preferences.
Like what?
Well, it argues that whether a person aligns with Christianity, Buddhism, or Marxism, they are acting in accordance with what feels intrinsically right to them.
Okay, that makes sense for religions.
But it goes further, claiming that whether someone desires money, beauty, solitude, or even violent conflict.
Wait, violent conflict?
Yeah, those preferences are also justified in the minds of the individuals holding them.
Wow. The text even compares the urge to become a police officer with the urge to become a thief, right? Insisting both individuals are following their own internal rightness.
That's the argument.
I have to pause here because biological instinct in a wolf is one thing, but applying this to a human choosing to steal or engage in violence, is the author just advocating for an extreme moral relativism where society throws its hands up, or is there a deeper point about our perception?
What's fascinating here is that the author isn't arguing for the dissolution of legal codes or societal safety.
Okay, good to know.
He is pinpointing the cognitive trap of external judgment. The text argues that when we look at the immense diversity of human preferences, even the destructive ones, and declare heaven's arrangement to be flawed, we are only exposing the limitations of our own understanding.
So it's about our limited view.
Exactly. We look at a lazy person and a hardworking person and try to assign universal moral value to their energy levels. Surfing's point is that we lack the cosmic vantage point to make that call. We can only govern what is right for our own trajectory.
Okay, so if my judgment of another person's lifestyle is the only actual error taking place, how does that work mechanically? What is happening in the brain when we make that error?
To answer that, the author moves from observing external actions to defining the mechanics of internal consciousness. He introduces a core spiritual claim.
Which is?
10,000 dharmas are mere consciousness. Reality is created by mind.
10,000 dharmas. That's a traditional Buddhist concept, right?
Yeah, it encompasses all physical phenomena, events, and laws of nature. So he's basically stating that the physical universe is entirely downstream from the mental universe.
He illustrates this with the structure of a water molecule, I think. The molecule itself just exists. It has no inherent aesthetic or moral value.
Right, it's just water.
It is only when the human mind observes it and assigns a label that it becomes beautiful or ugly. So the reality of the molecule's beauty doesn't exist in the water. It exists exclusively in the observer's attitude.
And this mechanism leads to a demand for radical personal responsibility.
How so?
Well, if your mind is the sole manufacturer of your reality, then your personal suffering is also an in-house production. The text is totally unflinching on this point.
Oh, I see where this is going.
It states that if you are suffering from sickness, if you are trapped in poverty, or if you are tormented by a troubled mind, it is entirely your own fault.
Wow.
You cannot outsource the blame to society, to unfair economic systems, or to bad luck.
That is, telling someone who is sick or trapped in systemic poverty that it is entirely their own fault challenges our basic sense of empathy. It sounds incredibly hard, almost callous.
It definitely does.
How does the philosophy reconcile this profound lack of external empathy with the idea of a cohesive, compassionate universe?
The cognitive dissonance you're highlighting is actually a deliberate feature of the text. The author anticipates this resistance and addresses it through the lens of divinity.
What does he say?
He asks, is the greatest creator dead? The greatest creator is not dead. It is you who are dead. Is Buddha not compassionate? Buddha is very compassionate. It is you who are not.
He literally turns the accusation of callousness directly back onto the reader's own internal state.
He does. And the underlying mechanism is empowerment, not malice.
Empowerment, by blaming them.
By aggressively stripping away the victim mentality, the author is trying to close off any escape routes the ego uses to avoid taking responsibility. If you blame the broader economy for your poverty, you are rendering yourself powerless. You're just waiting for a macro system to change.
I guess that makes sense. If you accept the daunting premise that your consciousness actively creates your reality, you suddenly possess the ultimate leverage to change it.
Exactly.
But the author's philosophy pushes to uncomfortable extremes that really test the very limits of this logic. We need to be clear that we are impartially reporting the author's philosophical viewpoint here, and obviously not endorsing these concepts.
Yes, sir.
Because the text explicitly claims that macro-level catastrophes, wars, plagues, earthquakes, floods, and fires are not wrong.
Right.
And it takes it even further into human malice, stating that burning, looting, embezzlement, theft, bribery, and rampant mafia-style activities are not wrong. The text just maintains its drumbeat. It is we who are wrong.
This is the ultimate crucible for Swifeng's philosophy. It asks the reader to look at the most universally condemned aspects of human existence and find the cosmic neutrality within them.
Okay, but if a mafia boss extorting a vulnerable neighborhood isn't inherently wrong, how does a functioning society even exist?
Well, the text suggests that societal function is merely a localized agreement we've constructed for comfort.
Like a set of rules we just made up.
Yeah. But at a fundamental cosmic level, events are just raw, neutral data. A plague spreading or a criminal syndicate extorting money are configurations of energy, human action, and consequence.
And the objective universe does not weep over them.
Exactly. The horror, the profound sense of injustice, the tragedy, those are emotional and moral labels generated exclusively by the internal state of the human observer. Reality, as we experience it, is just a reflection of our subjective consciousness processing that raw data.
Let me test an analogy here to synthesize this mechanism. Is it like sitting in a movie theater?
Okay, let's hear it.
The film projecting onto the screen might be a terrifying psychological thriller or a violent mob story or just a serene nature documentary. The light hitting the screen isn't inherently bad or good, it's just light and shadow.
Right.
The projector in the booth, which represents our subjective consciousness, is what dictates the genre of the reality we're experiencing.
The text supports that analogy perfectly. It literally states that the reality that we think is not reality, but rather a reflection of our subjective consciousness.
Wow.
It is our subjective consciousness that creates our reality in our minds. The suffering we feel regarding a war or a plague comes from our internal resistance to the event, our desperate desire for the universe to behave differently than it is behaving.
But why should we believe the projector is entirely in our heads? The author attempts to bridge this ancient spiritual philosophy with modern physics, right? Specifically pulling from quantum mechanics to validate the observer effect.
Yeah, he does. In quantum physics, a particle doesn't exist in a fixed, definitive state until it is measured or observed.
It's just a probability wave before that.
Exactly. Prior to observation, it exists in a wave of probabilities. The act of observation forces reality to collapse into a single state. The author imports this mechanism into human psychology.
How does he apply that to people?
He argues that the existence form of any event or person is intricately tied to the observer. Your moral judgment forces a neutral reality to collapse into a good or bad state. Until your mind evaluates it, it's just undefined potential.
And the author uses his own public persona as the ultimate Rorschach test for this quantum theory.
Yes, he does.
Zhuifeng highlights the wildly divergent ways people perceive him. Depending entirely on the observer's cognitive state, he notes that some people view him as the messenger of the greatest creator.
Right, highly revered.
But others look at the exact same man and see a madman or a fraudulent preacher. Some experience him as a close friend, others as a street shrew. Some see a saint, and some literally perceive him as an erotomaniac.
He is demonstrating that his objective identity is practically irrelevant. What he is to any given person mutates entirely based on the mentality of whoever is looking at him.
So the observer's internal state dictates the action and identity of the observed.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It gives a sharp new edge to the old saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The text embraces that, but adds a much darker, more challenging corollary.
The devil is in the eye of the enemy.
If we follow the quantum mechanism the author is laying out, the devil isn't a physical entity out in the world causing chaos. The devil is strictly a projection of our own internal animosity and unresolved friction.
The author concludes that you can only see demons in the external world if you are already harboring demons in your internal world.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
It really is. He states that only when you have gods and Buddha in your mind can you perceive gods and Buddha in the world around you. He is taking the conclusions of quantum mechanics and applying them to deeply ancient spiritual concepts.
So the outside world operates purely as a mirror.
Yes, flawlessly reflecting your internal landscape back at you.
Okay, so if the world is just a mirror and every single thing I perceive as wrong or broken is actually just a reflection of my own flawed consciousness, how do we break the cycle?
That's the big question.
How do we take this abstract philosophical framework and actually apply it to the daily friction of our lives?
The practical application of this philosophy is what the text calls Tao learning. The absolute, non-negotiable fundamental rule for a Tao learner is that you must focus entirely on changing yourself and abandon any attempt to change society.
Because trying to change society while ignoring your own consciousness would be like staring into a mirror and trying to comb the reflection's hair instead of combing your own.
That's a great way to put it. The text states quite plainly, if you do not change yourself, society and people will never change. If you change yourself, society and others will change accordingly.
It's completely inward focused.
It demands that if you want to inhabit a better, more peaceful environment, you must first cultivate a beautiful soul. If your internal state is chaotic or judgmental, no matter where you move or who you surround yourself with, your environment will always inevitably degrade to match your soul.
The essay ties this internal cultivation to a specific destination called the 1,000-year world, which it identifies as one of the 8 secrets of life. But it's not presented as a literal geographic utopia you can just travel to.
No, not a physical place. It represents an elevated state of existence or a higher dimension of consciousness.
Okay, so how do you get there?
The mechanism to enter it is entirely internal. You have to acquire the correct consciousness and soul frequency first. You don't reach the 1,000-year world and finally become happy and peaceful.
You have to generate peace and happiness internally first.
Exactly, which then manifests the 1,000-year world around you.
But the author points out a massive roadblock to achieving this. And it isn't a lack of intelligence or spiritual capability, it's just simple inertia, mental laziness.
He identifies that human beings possess a profound unwillingness to engage in sustained, in-depth self-reflection. It requires an immense amount of cognitive energy to constantly police your own judgments.
Yeah, it sounds exhausting.
It is infinitely easier and requires far less caloric energy to let our minds run on the established tracks of conventional, binary, right and wrong thinking. We love to point the finger outward.
Oh, absolutely.
But as he warns, that path of least resistance has no future and offers no escape from suffering.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now, whether you are dealing with a toxic workplace, a complex and painful relationship, or just feeling overwhelmed by the chaotic daily news cycle? The text provides a really blunt diagnostic tool.
It does.
If you want to get out of your immediate dilemma, you have to start by admitting that you are wrong. The agonizing plight in front of you is just an objective reflection of your own false consciousness.
And if you don't do the hard work of changing that internal state, the text promises that even if you manage to escape your current predicament, the next set of disasters will arrive unceasingly and in quick succession.
You will simply keep manifesting the exact same underlying problems, just wearing different clothing.
Yeah, the author doesn't soften the blow at the end of the essay either.
Yeah.
He leaves the reader with a series of incredibly stark ultimatums.
What kind of ultimatum?
He tells the reader, do you want to jump off a building and end it? Jump, you can go to hell. Do you want to cultivate Tao and elevate your existence? Do it. You can go to heaven.
Very black and white choices there.
Yeah, and then he says, do you want to suffer? It's easy. Just stick to your narrow mind, refuse to open up, and continue to insist that you are always right. Guaranteed suffering.
But the alternative he offers to that suffering is profound. He writes, do you want to be joyful and blessed? No problem. Just open your mind and engage in unconventional thinking. Just realize that you are wrong, and then you will have infinite joy and blessings.
It all hinges on surrendering the ego's desperate need for absolute certainty.
Which perfectly sets up the final paradoxical closing lines of the entire essay. After spending pages laying out this massive, reality-bending, unapologetic philosophy, Shifeng ends the text with a rhetorical device that just echoes in your head.
It's brilliant.
He writes, did I say wrong? Who is wrong? You or I? I know I am wrong, but are you right?
He completely disarms the reader's defenses by voluntarily surrendering his own claim to being right. It forces the reader into a corner where they have to question their own certainty one last time.
Because if the author himself admits he is wrong, how can you aggressively defend your own rightness?
Exactly.
It leaves us with a deeply provocative thought to mull over. We've spent this time looking at how this philosophy applies to personal, internal consciousness. But what happens if we scale this up?
Well, that's an interesting thought.
Imagine two opposing entities, let's say two warring nations locked in a generational conflict, or even just two people trapped in a bitter, years-long legal battle. What happens if they simultaneously adopted this unconventional thinking?
The implications are huge.
Right. If both sides fully and genuinely surrender their claim to being right, does the very concept of human conflict just evaporate? Or does the absence of right and wrong require an entirely new language of human interaction, a way of organizing society that our binary-obsessed species hasn't even invented yet?
It asks us to imagine the next stage of human evolution, really. Consider the staggering amount of economic, emotional, and physical energy we expend every single day defending our own rightness.
It's incalculable.
If we stopped powering that defense mechanism, the energy reclaimed could build a reality we can barely conceptualize.
It's a staggering thought to carry with you. The next time you find yourself metaphorically sitting in that courtroom gallery, waiting for a judge or society or your own mind to declare someone right and someone wrong, see what happens if you look in the mirror instead. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your reality, and we'll catch you next time.